Sega has apparently been working on a super game for many years now, specifically, I believe, since 2019. Yeah, essentially back in 2021, they announced a super game, and then a year later, they talked about how this concept has been in the works since 2019, although really details on this are pretty scarce, and I will be honest, they still are. Like, we don't have like a name for this game, or screenshots, or really any concrete details at this point, other than it's going to be a super game. From the little details they gave in 2022, they said they want it to be AAA, they said they had about 50 developers working on it, but they wanted to largely increase that number, and that they were going to use Unreal Engine 5 for developing this game, and that's about it as far as the details we have gotten. Well, it just so happens that Sega actually has made some job listings on their official website, and from these job listings, the website called The Gamer has actually kind of dissected some of this and has gotten the details that we can get from it. Now, these job listings say that they are for a big project, and they didn't name the project, but it seems at this point that it is a separate project to some of the IP revivals that Sega is undergoing right now with like Crazy Taxi, Jet Set Radio, and Golden Axe, because it looks like those actually have their own dedicated like sections on the website for job listings, whereas this is kind of in its own section. So the job listings basically say that they want certain people who are skilled in UI designing and systems designing and even like motion producing, I guess, like a cutscene producing, stuff like that for video games. And they've even got some listings for lead game designer. And it's interesting because these job listings say that they want people who have experience in MMOs, so like massive multiplayer online games, as well as specifically people who are skilled in open world game development. The job listings say that this project is going to be a mass multiplayer game, and that they aim to make it a very popular hit, specifically in the North American market. So at this point, with these new details especially, it's very clear that if this is the super game that has been mentioned years ago, which I really think that it is, we're looking at this super game being like a legitimate MMO RPG for Sega. And based on some reportings that I remember from a few months ago, I think I even made a video on it, it's very possible that this MMO could link like different IPs in the Sega universe. It sounds odd, but we could even be looking at like a sort of Avengers kind of concept here. That's probably a dumb comparison. That's just kind of where my dumb brain kind of went. Or you could think of like, what Nintendo does with, say, a game like Mario Kart. They combine all of these different Nintendo IPs into one game, but in this case, it's not going to be a racing game. It could be much more of an open world MMO game. Now, it is also worth mentioning that when Sega did announce this super game back in 2021, they were actually talking about their 5-year plan that I believe was beginning right at that time. And they said when they talked about this super game that they actually wanted it to release in the 2026 fiscal year for Sega. Now, the way I understand it, the fiscal years for Sega end on March 31st of the year that is that fiscal year. So that would mean we should get this game by March of 2026. Of course, that is just to say if their initial plan back in 2021 still holds true today. Things can obviously change, who knows? And obviously from this job listing, you have to kind of wonder if this is for the game's initial development or maybe for some sort of post-launch content, especially if it is some sort of live service game, because if this job listing is for post-release content, then yeah, we maybe could get this game, 15, 16 months from now, March of 2026. But if this listing is for initial development, well, that would definitely indicate that things have kind of stalled in the development process. And they're obviously not going to develop all of this probably within like a little more than a year from now. So if that is true, if this is for initial development, we'll probably have to wait a bit longer than 2026, unfortunately. One thing I think is very interesting too is for a company like Sega to make an MMORPG. When I think Sega, I do not think of games like that, and I was kind of curious. I figured there's no way Sega has ever made an MMO, but I was wrong. There is apparently this franchise called Phantasy Star Online. Now, the first one came out in 2000, the second one came out in 2012. The first one's servers are offline, it's just private servers, but I believe the second one still has servers up, I think. And I have to say, these games actually look very cool. I'm surprised I hadn't heard of it before. And from what I can see, by the way, this is not a game that connects Sega IPs. I believe this is just its own IP. But with this new Super game, we could very soon, hopefully by 2026, get a huge AAA MMORPG from Sega. It sounds pretty crazy, but by these new job listings, that could very well be the reality very soon.